Welcome to Her Drive, the nexus where stories of women from every corner of the globe unite. And for this special series, we are talking sovereignty. I'm Cynthia Cramblett, your host, entrepreneur, and a woman on a personal quest for self-discovery and empowerment. Lately, the word sovereignty has been bouncing around in my mind as a question. What does it truly take to live self-governed in a world that seems so adamant to keep women caged? And how do other women seem to do this so well? Driven by my insatiable curiosity, I've sought the wisdom of women whose lives exemplify sovereignty, each sharing their unique definition, the journey to claim it, and strategies to sustain it in today's modern world. These women include artists, sexuality and kink practitioners, healers, coaches, female health advocates, and much more. I invite you to join us as we celebrate the paths women must navigate, crafting their destinies with resilience. Together, we'll delve into their experiences from the echoes of triumph to the struggles in silence, exploring what it means to truly own one's power. I'm really excited you're here, a place where every voice is amplified, every story cherished, and the sovereignty of every woman encouraged and celebrated.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Her Drive's very special series. This series is titled Sovereign. As mentioned in the introduction, we are not only diving deep into these magnificent guest stories, but also focusing on what sovereignty is to them, how they embody it, express it, and perhaps give you some tidbits on how to bring your own version of sovereignty into your life. So our guest today is the beautiful, magnificent, and super inspiring Nadine Lee. I found her, I don't know how long it's been, maybe a year or two that I've been following her on social. And I actually bought this book last year that you self-published, right?
Yes.
Which is really powerful. We can get into that later. But this amazing book, Sex Priestess, and I worked through it last summer. It gave me a lot of beautiful understandings of things that I've gone through in my own life and a lot of beautiful processes and tools to move through a lot. So I highly recommend the book, and I'm really honored to have her today. So who is Nadine? I'm just going to read the back of the book, y'all, because it just is so encapsulating. But Nadine Lee is a teacher of the feminine tantric arts, feminine embodiment coach, devoted lover, and sexual liberator. She is the founder of Tantric Alchemy, a community devoted to supporting you into the woman you came here to be. She has helped thousands of women over the past decade heal sexual trauma and ignite the erotic fire within to channel that creative force that into their highest creative, feminine, and sexual expression. She offers private mentorships, online programs, and in-person workshops and retreats across the world. And I'm sorry, y'all, my cat was like getting in the mix. But yes, Nadine, hi, welcome.
Yes.
So glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure. I know based on your stories, you've been in Morocco for a bit of time. It looks like hosting a retreat and having a bit of joy. So how are you feeling right now?
Yeah, I'm feeling good, actually. Yeah, I love this land, and I only came here for the first time last year, and it was somewhere that was calling me for so long, like the architecture and the people and just everything about it. So it was really nice to finally make that dream come true and follow the curiosity. And yeah, every time I come here, it's just so magical. So yeah, I'm feeling good.
Fabulous. Well, I would love to start with kind of the genesis of your story, and then we can dive into Tantra and other magical things that you help women with and the embodiment of, and then everyone will dive into your definitions of sovereignty and all of that. So if you don't mind, what's kind of the beginning of your story and how you got into the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, so as you would have read in the book, so my journey started quite young. It was I remember, being very curious as a child. As young as 5, asking about God, questioning who God is, how can I meet this being, as well as being super tapped into my sexuality. So these two polar opposite paths, usually, in our world, were just like my main fascination as a child. So yeah, I feel I came in as a soul, just like already curious and destined for this path, because Tantra is the path of uniting, sex and spirit, or sex and divinity. But yeah, so basically, I experienced sexual abuse at a young age, around 7 years old, and I didn't reveal that until I was 18. So that whole time frame from 7 to 18, I was just keeping this within myself, and how it manifested in my body was, a lot of shutdown in my sexuality, and then swinging to the other side of like promiscuity and just so much confusion around boundaries, and also, experiencing anxiety and depression and eating disorders. So because I hadn't dealt with this original thing that happened to me, it was manifesting in all these sorts of ways in my psyche, just as any trauma does. So it kind of came to like a breaking point when I revealed to the family and what happened to me, and then I kind of like started to seek help in like the Western medical system, like psychiatry and psychologists, and I just didn't feel like it was helping me at all, and it was actually making me worse. So not that there's anything wrong with that path, but for me it just didn't gel. So it was kind of like a synchronicity that I found yoga and meditation. And when I went into that first class, it all just clicked. And I felt like finally this sense of connection to my body again. Because from what had happened to me, a common trauma response is to leave the body and disassociate. And I felt as though like all those years I was not fully in my body, and it didn't feel safe to be in my body, because of what happened. So the yoga and meditation was like this like missing link, and I just felt like I need to keep doing this. This is finally alleviating some of my internal suffering that's going on, and I just kind of kept going deeper into that path. And I didn't intend to teach this stuff to anyone. I was actually pretty resistant to the whole path. I was, grew up in mainstream. I was going to university, working in corporate, and I was pretty resistant to anything out there woo-woo hippie. So I was just doing it to help myself.
Go that way.
Whoops, I think it's offline. Okay, sorry. It just cut out. Can you hear me now? Sorry, can you hear me?
Hi, I can.
Yeah, sorry, I just cut out. The Wi-Fi is not that good here in Africa.
So you cut out basically at the point where you were talking about the body has different responses, and like the main one being disassociating. So I don't know how we can say to that point, but we'll just work with what happened.
Yeah, so I spent, all these years really disassociated, not feeling safe in my body. And so I found the yoga meditation path, and that was the first time I'd actually felt this sense of safety and connection to within, and alleviation of the suffering. So I felt like I wanted to explore this, deeper for my own personal healing. And I never had any intention to teach any of what I'm teaching today. Like I was actually really resistant to all of this whole, like, I saw it as like hippie world, and just like I grew up, in the mainstream society. My mum was pretty hippie, but like not like full blown. So I was like, okay, this is just a healing modality, but I'm not going to like go down in this path as a career. And so I had a lot of judgment and resistance to just, even taking a yoga class, doing meditation. But it was helping me, so I kept going with it. And yeah, I just kept going, healing myself. And then eventually I felt this call, like after a few years of doing my own inner work, I had felt like I'd really healed the piece around my body image and feeling safe in the body and eating disorder. And so I felt curious to, like, I'd always loved nutrition and naturopathy and all things health related. So I was like, I want to do a 180 and get out of my corporate world, and I want to become a nutritionist. So I studied to become a nutritionist. It was like a 3-year degree, and then I started from there helping women with eating disorders and with body image and these, common things that so many of us women experience. And that was really the gateway. It was like, okay, what's underneath these eating disorders and body image is sexuality. And so that took me deeper into my own sexual healing. And then I started working with, it was just all these teachers coming in, like Tantra teachers, sexual body work teachers, sexual psychologists. All these teachers were just flooding into my life. And I was blessed, to be friends with a lot of them and receive their teachings and sessions and even apprentice with some of them. So I, just started to do that inner work. And then it was after a few years, I started to integrate that modality of, the sexual healing into the work I was doing with women, because I saw it was kind of the root cause of a lot of the body image stuff was the relationship to our sexuality and these things. So yeah, that was 13 years ago. And now I've just been on that path since then, and sharing retreats and working with women in one-on-one space, group spaces, and writing the book and, doing all sorts of things. So that's really it in a nutshell. Yeah.
It's challenging to condense all of the processes and paths and that one goes on, especially over that duration of time.
Yeah.
But I love how your story includes resistance to all of these things, yet that was the medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been such a guiding force in my life. Just anything that I have major resistance to is usually underneath that is a desire. And it's not about fearing it, but actually being curious and moving towards it, because there's always medicine in that. And so whenever I feel that full on aversion, I'm like, oh, okay, there's some lessons in this, So yeah.
Oh, such powerful messaging, and I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
So in your journey, what were some other big takeaways for you? Just if you can recall anything in that particular healing process and moving more into the somatic sexology work.
So some of the takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was so many lessons and learnings, but the reason I do what I do with women now is because I saw a lot of what can go wrong. If you have sexual trauma, and ending up receiving sessions or healings from people where you actually get re-traumatized, in this space. So there's a lot of, people doing body work sessions with women, like yoni massage, releasing trauma from the body, literally from the yoni, the vagina, which is a powerful modality. But a lot of people in that, and specifically was what I experienced, a lot of men in that realm, can't control that desire, and it ends up kind of re-traumatizing the woman. So what I've kind of offered women is a safe space to do their own practice for themselves, like de-armoring, massaging the internal walls of the vagina with the jade egg practice, and de-armoring practices with either your hand or a wand, to a crystal wand, to release that tension, like taking it into your own hands. And I feel, that is a sovereignty piece. It's I'm not just going to let anyone touch me, and not even you need to build trust with someone to open yourself. And especially if you've had sexual trauma, it's even more you need a lot of trust built. So just booking a session with some random guy that offers yoni massage can often re-traumatize you, because your body is it doesn't feel safe. You just met this person. So yeah, that was a huge piece. And, you know, I experienced some weird things with some practitioners. And thankfully, a lot of that industry, there has been a lot of it exposed in the recent years, like people that are abusing that power and adding to people's trauma. So it's kind of been cleaned up a lot. But yeah, it's just being aware of like, there are like wolves in sheep's clothing. You know what I mean? Like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm a healer, a sexual healer that's going to help you, but they're actually like a predator. So, yeah,
Mhm.
that was a big one.
Wow. Yeah. I have definitely seen some documentaries and read stories about, as you said, the wolf pretending to be a sheep. And I love that you're guiding women on how to do it themselves. That
Yeah.
seems like such a great way. One, with so many levels to being empowered, right? Like one, you're becoming more attuned with your own physical anatomy, simultaneously connecting your anatomy with emotions, which as we know, the body keeps score. You know, everything's trapped in here. And then connecting with spirit and releasing seems so empowering.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow. For people who are not familiar with like tantric massage or any of this work, or even tantra itself, can you define a bit of the practices and the beliefs around this particular word, tantra?
Yeah. So, I mean, Tantra for me is, you know, I went and lived in an ashram in India and we still didn't get a definition. But
Nice.
essentially, it was like um, living your life like in kind of like accordance with the divine will, like living your truest self, your truest expression. Like that was the kind of vague definition that we got. And so that is a process in itself. It's like, how do we do that? It's like we've got to remove everything that's not true. So there's a purification process, you know, purifying the body, the physical body is the first gateway into Tantra, like detoxification, you know, getting your gut health good, clean eating, honoring your body as a temple. That's the absolute foundation. And then it's like emotional alchemy, emotional purification, looking at some of these traumas that have been stored in the body. And that's where a lot of the, you know, tantric massage, tantric body work comes in, because so much of our trauma is stored in our genitals as men and women, from all sorts, you know, like from soft core trauma to hardcore trauma. So, yeah, clearing out those blockages that block our life force, which it's stored in those, in that genital area, the lower two chakras, the root and the sacral. So once we clear out some of that stuck energy, then the life force, our creative energy, you know, our sexual energy, it's all the same term, can start to move freely through us. And I feel when that's moving through us, that's when we're living in our highest truth, in our alignment, and we're unlocking like our highest potential as a human. So, you know, yeah, that's how I see it. It's like it's a whole purification process, activating sexual energy, learning with tools and practices, and then learning how to circulate it for yourself first. And then
Mm.
then when you feel sovereign in that, that's when you bring the union with another. And it's like two beings coming together. Not that we have to be perfectly purified and whole to be, you know, in union, but like there is a level of, yeah, like um, co-creation versus codependent relating, and
Mm.
seeing the sexual act as like not just procreation, but like a ritual and a prayer to take you into higher states of consciousness. So that's how I see it, and it's not like a one word one sentence. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, fully. I've read a lot about tantra, and I'm like, there's a lot out there to try to distill it into a short definition. And how does each
Yeah.
person embody it and move through it? So you talked about the purification process. So if someone wanted to, how do I state this? if someone thinks that they have some sort of like sexual trauma or some blockages in their lower two chakras, or lower two energy centers, for those who may not know what those are, what would be like step 1 and 2 to on the long road to cleansing them?
Yeah, I mean, like what I shared, the first step is being mindful of what you're putting in your body and how you're treating your body. So your life force, your creative energy can't flow if we're like stuck with all these like toxins and, um, fake food and just like, yeah, you're riddled with toxins. So starting to look at your diet is number one, absolute foundation. And then working with stilling the mind, like this is like kind of the foundation of Tantra, I feel, is learning how to meditate. But in order to meditate, you kind of have to release some energy from the body in order to sit still. So having like some sort of embodiment practice, where you get in your body, whether that's like, you shake your body, you go to the gym, you do a workout, or whatever it is that gets you in your body, your physical body, and kind of like moves a lot of energy so it can kind of still your mind. So getting in your body is next, and then looking at mindfulness and stilling your mind and learning how to meditate properly. So those would be my first gateways in. Yeah.
They seem key. Oh, the food and the water that we consume are so important.
Yeah.
And I think for, at least I live in the United States, at least in the United States, we have fake food everywhere. It's like the only way you can not eat fake food really is to be, I would say, paleo. It's probably the best way to describe it here, or whole food diet. But yeah, it's a tough one, but also an easy fix once you realize how amazing real foods are.
Yeah.
And retrain the body to not want the artificial, because I feel like food scientists really understand our flavor profiles and addictions, and can like latch on to make us almost addicted to those flavors and things, and they're so bad for us, as you said.
Yeah, for sure. And there's like teachings on this in yoga and tantra. It's like the too much of the, like, I think it's like tamastic or rajastic. I don't know. It's like a term for like things that are poisonous for us. And a little bit of poison is okay. Like, it's not like becoming fully like deprived, like a little bit of chocolate or like, the occasional sugar here and there. But like if you're consuming McDonald's every day and eating like a block of chocolate daily, like it's drinking Coca-Cola and all this crap. So yeah, like a little bit of the poisons are okay from time to time, but not, as your staple diet and staple intake. So it's not, if you're consuming all that stuff, you're not going to feel good. Like if you feel unhealthy and sluggish and your like liver's sluggish, your digestion sluggish, you're never going to feel like turned on by life or like feel like creative energy moving through you. It just doesn't work like that. So yeah, that's a big part of it.
Amen. Oof. And so I want to kind of go back into your story a bit more. And when you were going through discovering yoga and these different practices and modalities to open you up and various teachers, how were you being received by your family and your community at the time?
Yeah, I mean, my community was always supportive. I always surrounded myself with like-minded people. That was a big part of it, having to let go of this old identity and old friendship circles that weren't aligned with like where I was heading. That didn't feel that challenging to me. It was very easy to like magnetize like-minded people into my community. But yeah, my family were pretty resistant, specifically my mom, around my path. She had certain ideas, of me being like the corporate woman that finished university, and I started working in advertising and media, and like that was her vision for me. Whereas, yeah, she never thought that I would go off and become like an entrepreneur and have my own business, and she saw it as risky and not like it was ever going to be a career. So there was a lot of like grieving in that, I think, from her side of like her daughter not becoming the person she thought she was going to become. So that was, like a process that we had to go through over probably like 5 years. It took for her to fully accept my path and what I was doing. She always thought like, oh, is this just a phase? Like, when are you going to go back to your corporate job? So I was like, no, this is like my life now, and I'm not going back. So, yeah, but now we're good and everything's amazing in that regard. So, but yeah, that was painful. And I think it hurts more when it's your family, because it's like friends can come and go like out of your life, but your family is there. And if they're not approving of you, that hits like really deep in your core. So it was really painful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I find that very relatable.
Yeah.
When you were going through this, how did you reaffirm to yourself that the pain that you were going through was worth it to stay on your individuated path rather than becoming the manifested version of what your mom had hoped you would become?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think like how I just felt I couldn't go back to what I was doing before. And, I would say that to her. I'm like I was miserable working that 9 to 5 job and wasn't fulfilling my soul. Like, why would you want that for me? And like, I don't want to be doing that. I can go do that, but you're going to see a miserable version of your daughter. And do you really want that? So I just knew like I couldn't go back to something that made me unhappy, and I just had to keep trusting, which was actually so hard, in those early days. Like, I did doubt a lot, and was like, oh, is this worth it? When you have like your family in your ear and wanting their approval, still seeking that approval. So I think I just had such a strong willpower, and I feel like that's what made me like even stronger on the path, because I had such resistance. I had to like be very certain that this is what I wanted. So it made me stronger in a way. So, and like choose it even more and very certain of it. So I can see it as like a blessing.
Mm.
Yeah. And I knew my mum and my family was not going to disown me. Like, I knew deep down they're not going to like, disown me. Like, I was like, what's the worst case scenario of this? Like, she's upset for a few years, but it's not going to like, she's not going to disown me as her daughter. So I knew like, but I know that can be different for some people, they can experience that, like their family members, like being like, I don't accept who you are. And, so I understand that can be a case that's even more intense.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, in some cultures, I think there's a lot of misconceptions simultaneously, um, fear, and a lot of things around alternative lifestyles, alternative career paths, and not understanding how someone might be successful and fully fulfilled and happy and joyous, not working in an office setting or what have you. But I think one of the beautiful things about our current time, space reality, is there seems to be a lot more safety in doing alternative jobs, especially I would say for some people like tantric massage and those types of things are especially like hands-on massage of people's private parts. I don't know if that's considered sex work or not, but it's certainly could be very, very taboo, and people not understanding how that could be. And I'm not necessarily speaking for your story or your work, but I mean just in that scope in general, how it can probably bring up a lot of fear and discomfort for people.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that would bring up so much. for sure. I mean, like I was just becoming a nutritionist and that brought up stuff. It's like it's not that extreme. So yeah, just depends on your conditioning and like the culture and everything. There's so many factors.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the beautiful things that I see from me looking into the window of your life is the powerful outreach that you have in guiding women through their own awakening. And I think you work with men as well. So in these processes, like, are there certain like measurable points where you can tell when you're working with a client where they might be within their awakening process or self-actualization process, and then determine how you guide them through to a higher level?
When I'm working with clients one-on-one, I usually get them to fill out a application form to kind of see where they're at, in their journey. And then we have a call, like a discovery call, so I can really understand where they're at on the path and if I can support them. So have like pretty intense screening process because for me, I don't really want to focus so much nowadays on like hardcore trauma, like people who are right at the start of their journey. I prefer to work with people who have done a little bit of like they've done some work. It's just more like, like they've already established, they've done some shadow work and done some healing already. So that's like a boundary of mine. I just don't want to take on like that level of intensity, So, and also you can't really do that online. You need to kind of be in person for that sort of stuff. So I can't like judge where someone's at on their soul's journey. Like it's not like there's a ranking score or anything's better or worse, but like that's a requirement that I have to work with me personally, is that they're not just coming in fresh, like, first healing session they've ever done in their life around their trauma. So that's really what I implement. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, you brought up the word sovereignty. So I would love for us to transition. And I have quite a few questions around it for you. But the first one I just want to ask is if you, outside of using the word sovereignty, if you could use one word to describe how sovereignty makes you feel, what would that word be?
I would say empowered. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. And I guess to expand on that definition, what is your definition of sovereignty, and how does that show up in your life?
Well, to me, it feels like you're sovereign over there's like so many different aspects. Like spiritual sovereignty, for example, is like feeling as though you don't need some person as an intermediary between you and the divine, you and God. It's like that's a personal relationship and it's very unique to every individual being on the planet. And spiritual sovereignty is like, to me, taking back your power and not needing like someone to tell you what's right or what's the right way to connect to God or spirit or divine. It's like, many paths lead to Rome and there's no right or wrong, I feel, in that exploration, because it is such a deep relationship. And then sexual sovereignty is like, having kind of mastery over those impulses and not being like blinded by them and led by them and like just let them kind of control you. So knowing how to turn yourself on without needing someone else to do that for you. It's like I know how to activate my own erotic energy without needing someone to come and like pleasure me. I think that's a big part of sexual sovereignty for both men and women. And of course, there's nothing more beautiful than sharing that intimacy with someone you love. But like, if you need the outside to make you feel a certain way sexually and validate you, then you're not sexually sovereign, in my opinion. So that's sexual sovereignty. And then, yeah, just like not letting the outside world in general dictate who you are is sovereignty, and what you believe and how you live your life and how you move through the world and what you do with your life is a full sovereignty reclamation. It's like, if we're just always like living to please other people, then we're never going to be truly happy and sovereign. We're just pleasing everyone else, but not ourselves. So I feel that's deep sovereignty in like our life overall.
Wow, I love the way you broke it down into 3 categories. And for you and like how you walk through your path, what are some challenges to your sovereignty currently? And do you have any remedies to move through them?
I mean, it's not so much like anyone else's dictations of my life. It's more like still working with internal like fragments and judgments and like calling back certain pieces. And that's just really, yeah, integration work and like deep, self-love, acceptance. So yeah, how I see it is like we have all these different parts of us, different fragments that, certain aspects of our personality that we were maybe once, when we were a child, told that that part of us wasn't like favorable. It could be anything from your bossiness to your intelligence to your sexiness to whatever it is. And like coping with that as a child, usually we shut those parts down. And then as an adult, it's like we have to reclaim and call back those parts of us and love those parts of us. So for me, like that's like I'm always coming up against something, but it's within myself, and the outside world can reflect it. That's just how it works, is like, oh, that person seems to be judging it, that part of me. So that's often the mirror to like, oh, maybe I'm still holding some judgment. It's always flipping the mirror and using the outside world as like a, yeah, measure point of like where we're at and like what's going on inside of us. So that's where what I am always dealing with. Yeah.
Same sister, same.
Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, we hear that over and over. Like, you are your biggest critique. You are your own worst enemy. And it's like, okay to hear that, but then to finally embody it and integrate that, and then be reminded of it in the process of, I call it my itty bitty shitty committee, when they're going like, wait a minute. Oh, this is no one else. This is just inside of me.
Yeah.
And that process of being able to find that part, that bit of you, right? And then
Yes.
kind of resuscitate her and acknowledge her and integrate her back into wholeness is really quite powerful.
Mm.
Do you have a process for which, when this is happening and you come up against a block, that best works for you?
Yeah, it's kind of one of the processes I take clients through, is kind of like soul, um, calling back like soul fragments. So like going into the first time that I experienced that, as a child, and like there's usually a memory that will come of when I first felt, yeah, my whatever XYZ was shamed or disowned by my caregivers. And then it's like working with the inner child and, reassuring her that she's safe now to express that part of herself. So it's a lot of inner child work, and just sitting with my inner child, basically like almost daily. I'll do some sort of process around that. Like after I do meditation, just, yeah, just being with her. It doesn't have to be like I'm triggered or something's happening, but just like making sure she's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of retrievals in the last year and a half, one with a guide, and now I do it quite frequently on my own. And it's always fun in a way, if I can use that word, to locate a fragmented piece and talk to her and meet her and love her as my current like adult self, and bringing the higher self in. And it's almost like it is like playing mother to myself. And I now have these collections of little girls and little me's from out throughout my timeline that are just like lined up in my internal sanctuary, who are enjoying themselves so tremendously. And I love that that's a part of your process with your clients and for yourself.
Yeah.
So if you could go back in time and give one version of you some words of advice, what age would she be, and what would you say?
I don't know. I feel like just maybe around like sensitivity, that was a big one. Like just that your sensitivity is a strength, not a weakness. And I think I don't even know how old I was. Like I feel it was as long as I can remember, just being so sensitive and it being like shamed. And like I used to just hear a lot like you need to toughen up, like the world is, you're not going to be able to survive in this world if you're too sensitive. And I can see some truth to that. Like, like this world is fucking crazy. And like you do have to have some level of like, like wits about you and energetic protection. I feel that's a big piece that I had to learn. It's not about like hardening up and being like some, armored person, but like knowing how to navigate energies. And so, yeah, I think just like not taking that personally because, being sensitive and then being told you're too sensitive, it's like, it makes it even worse. So, yeah, just that it's going to be one of your greatest strengths in your life. Yeah.
Super powerful words. And do you have any message for the listenership, if in any of this that we've discussed today?
I mean, yeah, maybe just around like, because we talked about the like leaving your old life behind and starting your own path. It's just, yeah, just keep, if you feel that call, like just um, keep at it, and listen to that inner truth and create space to listen to what's true for you and not let the outside world tell you who you are and what you need to do with your life. It's a big one.
How does your intuitive knowing show up for you?
Mm. Yeah, so there's a few ways. I I'm not like clairvoyant. Like some people see images, some people hear things. I don't know what the word is, but it's like I feel it in my body. Like I feel things viscerally in my body, like when something's off or if something's like meant to happen. If something's aligned, if something's not aligned, I feel it in my body, and there's just a knowing, and I feel that gets strengthened the more we do these tantric practices, like the purification. The clearer our channel is, the clearer our mind is. We're all intuitive and psychic. Like that's just, I feel everyone has that, but it's if we're muddled with all these emotional toxins, physical toxins, all the stuff, then it's cloudy, our brain's foggy. Like literally that's a word, brain fog. So of course you can't hear anything and sense anything in your body if you're all fogged up and clogged up. So yeah, that's strengthened over time, and if I'm doing like, it can change in certain situations. Like it enhances when I'm like living in places like in nature, where there's a lot more like less interference of technology and all these things. And I'm meditating a lot more. So the way I kind of keep it flowing is having that daily practice of tuning into myself. I wake up every day and meditate straight away as soon as I wake up, do some yoga, really connecting with my body, with my breath, with my soul, and that really anchors me for the day, and I feel super connected from the moment I wake up. And that kind of how we start the day really dictates what's going to happen in the day. So if we're like, waking up straight away and just jumping out of bed to an alarm, rushing out the door, picking up a piece of toast, and like you're just all hectic, frantic, like you're not, regulated in your body and your nervous system, and there's not going to be much clarity. So, if you can set your alarm like 10 minutes earlier just to have that time for just stillness, that's huge. Like that changes everything. So you can have that kind of, like daily ashram type ritual space, like prayer space every day. It's not like you have to go and live in an ashram or become a nun. It's like you can bring that daily, the space where it's reminding you of who you truly are and deep connection. So that's really, how I do it.
Magnificent. Well, it's been such a joy chatting with you, and I would love for you to inform everyone where they can find more about your work and your offerings.
Yeah, so I have my Instagram, which is Tantric Alchemy Official, and also my website, which is www.tantricalchemy.net. And on the website, there's a lot of self-paced online courses that I have for people to get started on this path. So they start at, I think, $129 is the lowest price, up to like $400. So it's like, choose your adventure, choose where you want to start. And that's a really good entry point into my work, where you're guided through pleasure practices, sacred sexuality, tantric practices for both men and women. Actually, I've got a course for men as well. So, that's really where you can find me and start journeying. And also my book, obviously, which is on Amazon. You can get, Sex Priestess. And it's a good starting point for sure. Like, it's a no-brainer.
That's fantastic. And is there anything that we should be looking out for that you have coming down the pipeline?
Well, at the moment I have a course, a group mentorship for women who are wanting to actually write their own book and birth their own books. So it's going to be like a creative mentorship, and me guiding you through that whole process, working through creative blocks and giving you the framework for, writing your book and all the tools to get on the self-publishing path and marketing your book, doing a book tour, all the things that I wish I had during my journey. I've learned from my own experience of what is needed. So that's coming up. That's starting on April 10. And it's an online group mentorship for 6 weeks. So there's that. And then my one-on-one mentorship, which is always kind of opening here and there. Yeah. So you can check all that out on my website.
Magnificent. Well, thank you so much for being a part of Her Drive Sovereign series. It's been a joy to connect with you, especially after following you for so long and working through your book. And here's the thing, guys. It's not just like reading the book. It's actually doing the practices and answering the questions that are in the book that were most helpful for me. So thank you, Nadine, for bringing this into my understanding, and you're such a gift. I really enjoyed you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for witnessing this episode of Her Drive Sovereign.